sunny today again, although for whatever reason there's less people outside. And with that in mind, what did I read today? I guess this first one talks about things like wildfires, which happens a lot here during the summertime. But how about this? Apparently they say they're using drones to help keep it under control. This one says, drones tackle Okanagan blaze as cool weather helps bring BC wildfires under control. And for the sounds of it, it's more about, I guess, mapping per se, the actual area and seeing what it's like versus actually using the drone to say dump water or anything like that. It says drones are helping map hotspots in a wildfire burning in British Columbia's Okanagan region as cooler conditions helped firefighters elsewhere in the province bring blazes under control. Crews were making progress on several wildfires Wednesday, including a blaze near Lytton that broke out nearly a month ago and destroyed several properties. But BC Wildfire Service Information Officer Michael Elsay told a news conference that crews were still having a difficult fight with a 67 square kilometer fire southwest of Penticton in Okanagan. Elsay said new drone technology is being used to scan the fire's edges to ensure flames have been put out. The drone was operated overnight and helped crews understand what hotspots should be targeted, he said. This thermal scan allows us to really nail down the final spots, especially the tricky, rocky, deep-burning root systems. These drones are very sensitive. They can pick up even very small amounts of heat, so we will be able to really confirm the work that we're doing out there. Just another example, I think, of people using it as a tool to help solve a situation which would normally cost probably tons of money to have a helicopter and stuff flying back and forth. It just comes down to what you're using and how, in my opinion, as opposed to creating stuff that are so over the top that make no sense, that stops people actually from using it in a good way. And with that thought, this actually made me wonder whether or not this seemed a bit much in terms of it comes across as a minor incident per se, and it should be treated as such, but the way, I guess, it's being portrayed here, it sounds like it's a huge, I don't know, aircraft crashing or something like that. This one says, 3-year-old child injured after trying to catch drone flown in park. A 3-year-old child was taken to the hospital after being cut by the rotor blades of a drone flown in Nottinghamshire Park. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch said the child jumped up and tried to catch the unmanned flyer in Wildfire Park, Huthwaite, on 16th of April. The child suffered cuts to the face. An AAIB report said the 45-year-old pilot accepted he should not have been flying a device close enough for it to be caught by the child. An investigation found the drone was flown over the heads of a group of children on a patch open ground after they took an interest in it. After the pilot steered the vehicle a few feet above their heads, they started to chase it, when the 3-year-old jumped up and managed to touch the rotor blades. The drone briefly lost height and its blades struck the child, making 2 significant cuts on their face as well as smaller cuts to their nose, chin, and fingers, the AAIB said. The pilot reported being surprised when the child jumped up and reflected that, in hindsight, he should not have been flying in the area. So it's an unfortunate accident. I know that happens a lot where people are flying a drone, people take a huge interest in it, for example. I mean, you've seen me plenty of times just interacting with the public. And in these cases, just where the way it's written again, they treat it like it's a huge aircraft, whereas it seems like it's an accident, unfortunately. It would remind me it would be no different than, I don't know, someone playing some kind of random sport or something like that, and then someone gets injured for whatever reason. It could be someone kicking a soccer ball and it hits them right in the eye or the back of the head by accident. It should be treated as such, correct? Because it makes me think, in this case, will people actually use this as an example to say, yep, ban them all, over the top regulations and stuff? They make sense in every single way. Like, to that, again, to me, it sounds like an incident. But unfortunately, from what I gather, people probably will use this as a way to say, oh, these things are dangerous, get rid of them all, and so forth. Although it does remind me of the thought I've often said, if anyone wants to say here, oh, it's because of one person or ruined it for everyone, that's it. That's why we have, I don't know, over-the-top regulations. You can't say that again because of all the incidents that have happened. Like here, for example, RCMP, police officers crashing drones into helicopters, manned aircraft and all that, putting people in danger, you could say. Nothing is said and nothing is done. So you could argue here the guy did something stupid, he admitted it, he's going to get, I would assume, punished in some way. You can't ever say that if you're inconsistent in condemning, let's just say, this is a reason why you have over-the-top regulations, and those other incidents are, oh well, it's just a court incident, nothing to see here. Now with that thought actually of things like over-the-top regulations, this was kind of interesting here. It dealt with Transport Canada, and from what I gather, it related to things like vaccine mandates, where here in Canada anyways, they had a rule where if you weren't vaccinated and all that, then you couldn't fly on an airplane, you couldn't go on a train and so forth. Now apparently in recent times, there's been a lot of lawsuits of these, I guess, mandates, and one of them specifically was trying to find out, well, Transport Canada, for example, what were the facts and stuff you were using to justify these mandates. And just reading some of the court documents is kind of interesting. Like this one here, this guy writes what? This is the epic moment when the government's expert witness, who was relied upon to justify vax mandates for Travel Director General at Transport Canada's COVID recovery team, is stunned into silence and has to admit there was no document supporting a recommendation for mandates. So you can see, I guess, in this court transcript here. And so my question for you is, do you have any emails, briefs, or reports from PHAC and Health Canada recommending the implementation of mandatory vaccination policy for travel? And it seems like, I guess, the guy doesn't answer first and goes, can you hear me? And he says, I can hear you and I'm reflecting on your question. And ultimately, the guy says, I do not recall a document from the Public Health Agency or Health Canada to Transport Canada recommending that Transport Canada take this approach. However, according to this, the person does say they had discussions, but ultimately what it comes down to is it doesn't sound like when they came with the final, I guess, rules, there wasn't a health expert that actually recommended it, saying, yes, this makes the most sense. They kind of, I guess, took it upon themselves to make it that way for whatever reason. And then they asked, for example, do they have records of this? Like it says here, okay, and are there meeting minutes from those discussions, or are there agendas from those meetings? And it says, from internal Transport Canada meetings with senior management, no, none that I'm aware of. So no documented, I guess, discussions about this before they made the decision and all that. Doesn't that make you wonder, what's going on? Is this entirely, for example, fact-based, or is it more for whatever reason they just decided this is what we want to do? So thinking about it in terms of the drone situation, would it be accurate to say it's kind of similar, where one could argue, like Transport Canada, they're saying, well, we talked to, quote, stakeholders and all that, and even though there's people saying this makes absolutely no sense, get rid of it and so forth, they can just argue, well, we talked to them. And then when someone asks, well, can you show me, for example, I don't know, the recreational flyer or something like that, they actually said, yes, this is great, actually do it. And they're like, no, there's no actual formal recommendation for people to do that, so you basically did it anyways. Wouldn't that be kind of another way of thinking about it in terms of what they're doing per se? It's kind of like what I mentioned before. For me, a lot of this stuff is not even so much about, quote, flying a drone per se. It's ultimately, when you look at it in the big picture, it's kind of prejudice and discriminating, where it doesn't seem like it's based on facts per se. In terms of the way things are managed, there seems to be some other factor. You could argue, which many people say, and I don't doubt it, it's all for money and commercial reasons. Restrict this person, that person, pay thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars for these courses and so forth. I wouldn't doubt that would be a possible motivation. And here's an example. If this is true in the comparison, it might not be you today per se, but eventually they'll carry on the same type of mentality and approach, where it's not fact-based when you actually look at what they're implementing, and that's a concern. So that's why even if it doesn't affect you today, it may affect you tomorrow. So that's why you have to kind of pay attention to it all. Similar to why I'm keeping an open mind, where just because I don't do something per se, I can't just look at the sideline and say, okay, whatever, take away their rights, this and that, because who knows, tomorrow they could use the same non-factual, I guess, science per se, in implementing some kind of ridiculous regulation as well, and the things that I do. If that does end up being the case too, where in the end there was no, quote, health official that said, yes, we encourage, for example, this way of doing things, like those mandates and all that, and they just kind of did it themselves anyways, it'll be fascinating to see how that actually affects the agency, and whether or not that will result in people saying, okay, this place needs change. Alright, see you guys later.